Bonafide beats. Heavy hit spits, wildfire.
Welcome back to the Deepwater Podcast. And today we are going to look at the Miami Dolphins wide receiver group. And for me, this was the easiest evaluation that I've had to do since we've been looking at this Dolphins roster for the 2020 offseason. So this one should be really quick, and we're going to dive right into this. And that's because for the first time, I don't believe that it's necessary that the Dolphins make any moves when it comes to this position group. So we're going to jump right off of the top and place these receivers that Miami has in these four buckets, beginning with studs. And the Miami Dolphins have a proven stud on their roster at wide receiver, and that man is Devante Parker. A lot of people feel like Devante Parker just had a breakout season this year, but I personally do not agree with that assessment. I believe Devante Parker has always had the talent, but the question with Devante Parker has always been whether or not Devante Parker can stay healthy. And this was the first season where Devante Parker stayed healthy, and boy, did he deliver. Did you know that Devante Parker led all AFC wide receivers in yards? Devante Parker also led all AFC wide receivers in touchdown catches. He was only bested by two players, and they were both tight ends in both of those departments. Travis Kelce is one of them because Travis Kelce led the AFC in yards receiving as a tight end. The 1,200 yards and the 9 touchdowns that Devante Parker delivered were accentuated at the end of the season when he took the NFL's Defensive Player of the Year, Stephon Gilmore, and basically made a poster out of him in that final game of the season up in Foxborough when the Dolphins did not shy away from the Defensive Player of the Year. They went right at him, and Devante Parker put in work. So I believe that it's simple to go ahead and classify Devante Parker as a stud, and the only thing that we need from Devante is Devante Parker to stay healthy. And at 27 years old, we have no reason to believe that he can't stay healthy. And one other thing that I'm going to point out about Devante's measurables is something that you're going to see as a trend as we go through the players on this roster. Devante sits at 6 feet, 3 inches tall. Okay, so he's a big-bodied wide receiver with a large catch radius, and he can go up and get the football. And I'm going to move from Devante Parker right now and ask, do we have any starters in this group of wide receiver? And I would say yes. Miami has 3 other wide receivers that I would classify as starters, and one in particular with the potential to become a stud, and that's Preston Williams. Preston Williams is also listed at 6 feet, 5 inches. And if he can recover from that ACL injury, then Miami has a ridiculous 1-2 punch at wide receiver. The other starter that I have listed is Allen Hurns. And a lot of you folks forgot that Allen Hurns was on this roster because Allen Hurns suffered a ridiculous concussion in the game against the Dallas Cowboys earlier this season, and he was kind of brought along slowly for the rest of the season. But Allen Hurns is a starter in this league. Everywhere he's been, he's a quality number 2 wide receiver. And how tall is Allen Hurns? Allen Hurns is 6'3". Okay. Now, that moves us along. Do we have any more starters? Albert Wilson, I would list as a starter in this league. Because the only problem with Albert Wilson is whether or not Albert Wilson would recover from that hip injury he suffered that was literally a career-threatening injury. And some of you folks have forgotten how well Albert Wilson played in that 2018 season with Adam Gase before he suffered that injury. Albert Wilson can play inside. Albert Wilson can play outside. And that's the reason that they brought Albert Wilson in. So that gives Miami 1 stud and 3 starters. So where do we move from there? Jakeem Grant. And I would label Jakeem Grant as an incumbent because Jakeem Grant have not proven himself as a wide receiver totally. And I can't decide whether or not I believe that Jakeem Grant can be healthy. But Jakeem Grant is a game changer in special teams. And we've seen that through the early years of his career in Miami. And that moves us on to the next wide receiver on the roster, which is Isaiah Ford. And we all love Isaiah Ford's potential because Isaiah Ford has also been an injured player, but he was a stud at Virginia Tech, and he's taken advantage of all the opportunities that Miami has given him at the wide receiver position. So if I have to label this position group, I would say this is a luxury, and there's going to be a lot of teams in the NFL that are waiting to see who the Dolphins will cut. So where does that leave us? I think the receiver room in Miami is actually a luxury, and it's going to be a luxury for whoever the Dolphins end up playing at quarterback this season. And the reason I brought out the height of those players, because I've neglected to remind you that Isaiah Ford is also 6'2", is when the Miami Dolphins employed Chan Gailey and Chan Gailey's spread concepts, what you'll be able to see is a lot of 4 wide receiver sets, 3 wide receiver sets, with big wide receivers blocking smaller defensive backs. And in those occasions that the Dolphins decide to stick that ball into that running back's chest, you have an advantage in the running game. And I believe that Chan Gailey will use that to his advantage this particular season, because it seems that Chris Grier has a prototype that he's looking for as far as size and speed, and being able to work the middle of the field with the smaller targets like Jakeem Grant and Albert Wilson is going to give the Dolphins a lot of room to move and manipulate defenses this offseason, or this particular upcoming season, I should say. I told you that this was going to be a quick video, and it actually is, because when you have a luxury like that, if somebody falls to you, you can take that player and develop that player, and you're not pushed to move into free agency or use a high draft pick on a wide receiver unless somehow you manage to fill all of your holes in the offseason and free agency, and you're sitting there with one of those 3 picks that Miami has, particularly in the later rounds, and there's a receiver sitting there that you just simply cannot pass on at that point, okay? And that's going to do it for today. And what we're going to do is we're going to move on to the running backs in the next episode, because I think that there's some things there in the running back that people aren't particularly looking at. And I think there's a particular player that the Dolphins fans and the media have given up on just a little too soon. So I'll see you guys on the other side.
We got keys to the underground. Shimty. Killer Hurt. This for you. About to get sick with it. Exclusive. People. As quick as I can spit it, I'm sick with it. Survivor, you and yours, riders. Born pieces of shit, flip scripts just to get rich. In this rap world of murder, everything except track, y'all whack. A matter of fact, never seen dead bodies, the aftermath of what I just did with my army. Deep